Juman and Honorable Joanna Béranger, presently suspended from the service of the Assembly, who have forcefully entered the precincts of the National Assembly to access the chamber and who have also created disturbances outside the chamber with a view to obstructing and interrupting the proceedings of the House. Honourable members, I have considered the matter, and I take the view that offences may have been committed under Section 6(1)(c), H, and I of the National Assembly Privileges, Immunities, and Powers Act, which reads as follows. Contempt of the Assembly. Subject to subsection 2, each of the following acts, matters, things constitute the offence of contempt of the Assembly. Subsection C reads as follows. Refusing or willfully failing to obey any rule or order of the Assembly, or any order of a committee acting within the scope of its authority. Subsection H reads as follows. Creating or joining in any disturbance which interrupts or is likely to interrupt the proceedings of the Assembly or of any committee while the Assembly is sitting. Subsection I reads as follows. Misbehaving in a disrespectful, indecorous, improper, or disorderly manner within the precincts of the Assembly at any time between the commencement and final termination of a sitting on any day which the Assembly meets.
Mr. Speaker, sir, in the light of your ruling, I move that the matter whereby Honourable Bagwan, Honourable Juman, and Honourable Joanna Béranger, presently suspended from the service of the Assembly, who have forcefully entered the precincts of the National Assembly to access the chamber and who have also created disturbances outside the chamber with a view to obstructing and interrupting the proceedings of the House, be referred to the Director of Public Prosecutions for appropriate action pursuant to Standing Order 74-4 of the Standing Orders and Rules of the National Assembly.
Motion is seconded. The question is that the matter whereby Honourable Bagwan, Honourable Juman, and Honourable Joanna Béranger, presently suspended from the service of the Assembly, who have forcefully entered in the precincts of the National Assembly to access the chamber and who have also created disturbances outside the chamber with a view to obstructing and interrupting the proceedings of the House, be referred to the Director of Public Prosecutions for appropriate actions pursuant to Standing Order 74-4 of the Standing Orders and Rules of the National Assembly. Those in favour say aye, those against say no. Aye. The ayes have it. Honourable Jiwadoyaru.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me the floor to intervene on the Finance Miscellaneous Provisions Bill 2024-2025. I also join my colleagues in congratulating you on your appointment as Speaker of the House. The Finance Bill, Mr. Speaker, provides for a range of amendments in various legislations, each meticulously crafted to support our economic and social goals. These amendments, I must say, are not mere technicalities. They are essential adjustments that will facilitate the effective implementation of the budget 2024-2025. I have to say that this last budget also strikes the right balance between economic progress and social development. Inclusivity, social justice, and equality can only be achieved if economic progress and social development go hand in hand. From 2014 to date, our government has lived up to the challenge, and the Minister of Finance, Honorable Padayachi, has over the years successfully worked towards achieving this important balance. Mr. Speaker, the government's commitment to social welfare is unwavering. The population bears testimony that during the last decade, our government proposed and implemented a series of measures to improve the lives of our seniors, persons with disabilities, widows, orphans, and also other vulnerable people. One of our top priorities is to cater for their welfare, security, and well-being. As such, this last budget continues to reflect the vision of our government. Allow me at this stage, Mr. Speaker, to address some of the salient clauses of the bill. I must highlight that one of the main clauses is in fact the substantial increase in basic pensions. I'm here referring to the basic retirement pension, basic widow's pension, orphan's pension, and basic invalidity pension also. How can we forget the fact that in 2005, the basic retirement pension was only 2,200. From 2005 to 2014, during the 9-year mandate of the previous regime, Labour Party, the pension was increased by merely 150 to 250 rupees per year. In November 2014, the basic retirement pension stood at merely 3,623. We are here talking of an increase of only 1,423 over a period of 9 years, from 2005 to 2014. In November 2014, as soon as we came, we have increased the basic retirement pension from 3,623 to 5,000. We have not stopped there. We have kept on increasing the basic retirement pension over the years. Today, we are proposing to amend the second schedule of the National Pensions Act to further increase the basic retirement pension to 14,000 rupees for those aged 60 to 64, 15,000 for those aged 65 to 74, 16,500 for those aged 75 to 89, 24,210 for those aged 90 to 99, and 29,210 for those aged 100 years and above. Mr. Speaker, over 9 years, 2014 to 2024, we have brought an increase of more than 10,000 rupees in the basic retirement pension compared to 1,423 by the previous government over the same period of time. We have given same consideration to persons with disabilities, widows, and orphans. Let me now address the basic invalidity pension and the widow's pension. In 2005, you will remember the basic invalidity pension and the basic widow's pension were only 2,025. That is less than the basic retirement pension, which was at that time 2,200 rupees. In November 2014, both pensions stood at merely 3,267. From 2005 to November 2014, both pensions were increased by only 1,242. Now, What have we done, Mr. Speaker? We have found it appropriate to align the basic widow's pension and the basic invalidity pension with the basic retirement pensions. Today, both pensions stand at 14,000 rupees. Therefore, over our 9-year mandate, these two pensions have been increased by 10,733 compared to only 1,242 by the Labour Party government. Likewise, the basic orphans pension was only 1,120 in 2005. In November 2014, the basic orphans pension stood at merely 2,500 rupees, an increase of only 1,380 over a period of 9 years, from 2005 to 2014. Since November 2014 to date, we have increased the basic orphans pension from 2,500 to 14,000 rupees, an increase of 11,500 rupees compared to 1,380 by the previous government over almost the same length of time. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, it is good to know also that currently there are 269,245 beneficiaries of the basic retirement pension, 16,883 beneficiaries of the basic widow's pension, 27,251 beneficiaries of the basic invalidity pension, and 392 beneficiaries of the orphans pension, making a total of 313,771 beneficiaries. As you can see, Mr. Speaker, over the years, the lives of 313,771 people have been improved. If we had followed the trend of the Labour Party, that is, increased pension at the rate of 150 rupees to 200 rupees yearly, today the basic retirement pension would have been around only 5,046 instead of 14,000, not even half of what it is today. Likewise, the basic invalidity pension and the basic widow's pension would have been 4,509 rupees instead of 14,000 rupees now. The basic orphans pensions would have been 2,500 rupees instead of 14,000 rupees today. Mr. Speaker, it is worth noting that soon after the announcement in the budget speech 2024-2025, my ministry has already paid the new increase in all the basic pensions. On 1st July 2024, most beneficiaries of the basic pensions have been paid the new rates. The remaining beneficiaries, I am here referring to those deriving their basic pensions through the post offices, have been paid as from 3rd July 2024. Through close, Mr. Speaker, our aim is to build a more inclusive and fairer society, which is why since 2014, our government has come up with a series of initiatives in favor of persons with disabilities. The amendment to the Excise Act is being proposed following several requests made by parents to broaden the category of persons with disabilities benefiting from duty concessions. Through Clause 29 of the Finance Bill, we are proposing to amend the Excise Act to make provisions for a new category of persons with disabilities to benefit from duty concessions. Currently, under the Excise Act, a parent or legal guardian of a child with orthopedic disability, severe mobility problems, and who require constant care and attention is eligible to benefit from duty concessions on motor vehicles. Now, by adding a new paragraph 72A, to the first schedule of the Excise Act, parents or legal guardians of children of all types of disabilities will benefit from a 100% duty-free purchase of a motor car granted once every 7 years. This would therefore enable parents having children with disabilities suffering from autism spectrum disorder, severe intellectual disabilities, severe visual and hearing impairment, who were deprived of such facility to start benefiting from same. This measure, Mr. Speaker, sir, will surely ease the burden on parents and demonstrate our compassion and responsiveness to the needs of those in need. To bring further relief to children with disabilities, through Clause 83 of the bill, we are proposing to amend the Social Contribution and Social Benefits Act. This amendment makes provisions for an additional disability allowance of 3,000 rupees to all children with disabilities under the age of 18 who are already benefiting from a disability allowance. I wish to add that children with disabilities who are in receipt of the basic invalidity pension will also be eligible to this additional allowance of 3,000 rupees. This additional allowance, Mr. Speaker, sir, will of course have to be recommended by the medical board. Encore une fois, Monsieur le Président, nous avons été à l'écoute des parents afin de leur accorder davantage de soutien. Nous ne pouvons pas rester insensibles aux difficultés des personnes qui ont besoin d'aide. Cette mesure va certainement alléger leur fardeau. Qui a oublié l'injustice subie par les enfants moins de 15 ans vivant avec un handicap qui n'étaient même pas éligibles à la pension d'invalidité? This injustice really bothered me and the government, and unacceptable that the previous government has not done what needed to be done long ago. Nous avons tenu à corriger cette injustice qui a perduré pendant plus de 40 ans. Cela montre l'engagement de notre Premier ministre, Pravin Kumar Jagnnath, et de notre gouvernement de continuer à accompagner et encadrer les enfants en situation de handicap. Grâce aux mesures apportées par ce gouvernement, un enfant en situation de handicap peut désormais avoir sa pension d'invalide de 14 000 roupies, carers allowance de 3 500 s'il a besoin de l'assistance d'un soignant, le remboursement des frais de taxi estimé à 2 000 roupies pour se rendre à l'école et la school allowance de 2 000 roupies. Si on fait le calcul, 14 000 roupies plus 3 500 plus 2 000 roupies plus 2 000 roupies plus 3 000 roupies, donc un enfant âgé jusqu'à 18 ans aura 24 500 roupies. Mr. Speaker, the population will remember our legacy for years to come. We listen to the people and bring solutions to their problems. As a caring government, each year in the national budget, we have tried our best to strike the right balance between economic development and social progress and address challenges through meaningful social measures in each of our government's budget. Another laudable measure in the Finance Bill is the revision of the child allowance under the National Pension Act. Previously, a beneficiary of a basic pension under the National Pensions Act could benefit from a child allowance for a maximum of 3 children. Through Clause 61 of the Finance Bill, we are removing this restriction. Henceforth, the number of children will no longer be capped. A beneficiary of a basic pension will be eligible for child allowance for all of the children. Around 12,500 children are expected to benefit from this measure, and 300 million have been allocated for this particular measure. Allow me now to address Clause 61 of the Finance Bill, amending Section 38 of the National Pensions Act. Mr. Speaker, since we are speaking of the NPF-NSF Investment Committee, which has been the subject of much debate lately, let me seize this opportunity to bring some clarity. Briefly, Mr. Speaker, the House will recall that the parliamentary question dated 9 July 2024 was on the placement made by the NPF-NSF Investment Committee. The supplementary question was on one particular placement in hold attitude. NPF-NSF Investment Committee has made over 250 placements. If the original question was specific to whole attitude, I would have had all the details at that point in time. That is why I told the honourable member that his supplementary question was far from the original questions and to come up with a specific question. Having said this, let me reassure the House and the workers that the National Pension Fund presently stands at 154 billion and the National Savings Fund stands at 43 billion. And as I stated in my reply, the NPF-NSF Investment Committee makes investment in the best and safe manner. I wish to inform the House that on 12 June 2024, Whole Attitude has settled all outstanding interests amounting to 129.6 million to NPF-NSF for the period March 2022 to September 2023. In addition, Whole Attitude has also paid a penalty of 10.8 million on 1st July 2024. I have been further informed that as far as the capital of 1.4 billion is concerned, the maturity date is on 30th September 2024. The capital is secured by guarantee. Mr. Speaker, let me now come to the amendment under Clause 61 of the Finance Bill. We are further reinforcing the composition of the NPF-NSF Investment Committee. Representatives from the PMO, Ministry of Financial Services, and the Bank of Mauritius will now form part of the NPF-NSF Investment Committee. The purpose is also to retain the tripartism spirit so that all decisions are taken collectively. Officers, as may be designated by the Secretary to Cabinet and Head of the Civil Service, will assist the NPF-NSF Investment Committee. This will surely ensure prompt tracking and reporting on performance of investment portfolios, ensuring adequate supervisions and control are in place, and initiating prompt recovery procedures as and when required. Mr. Speaker, sir, all these new measures are a testament of our commitment to promote inclusiveness, social justice, and also to ensure that no child is left behind. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Bola.
Mr. Speaker, sir, it is indeed my pleasure to participate in the debates on the Finance Miscellaneous Provisions Bill of 2024. We all know that the Finance Bill is a pivotal piece of legislation for the implementation of the various measures enunciated in the budget 2024-2025. The underlying philosophy of the recent budget was crafted to secure our future. Tomorrow is ours, reflects our roadmap for progress. We believe in equity. We believe in a society where everyone has access to resources and opportunities. This means investing in education, healthcare, and social services to level the playing field and bridge the gap. Another cornerstone of our budgetary philosophy is sustainability. We recognize that our actions today have consequences for future generations, and we must act responsibly to safeguard the planet and its resources. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Finance Bill seeks to bring amendments to more than 90 existing legislations. Of these amendments, I will touch upon 10. First is Economic Development Board Act. Second, Companies Act. 3, Banking Act. 4, Financial Reporting Act. 5, Financial Services Act. 6, Freeport Act. 7, Income Tax Act. 8, National Pensions Act. 9, the Virtual Asset and Initial Token Offering Services Act 2021. And lastly, I will comment on Financial Crimes Commission Act. I will therefore lay emphasis on the impact of the proposed amendments on the financial services sector. Mr. Speaker, sir, Economic Development Board Act. Mauritius has developed its financial services architecture in the late 80s. And this sector picked up in 1992 with the creation of the Mauritius Offshore Business Activities Act, also known as MOBA. Over the last 3 decades, the main focus of the financial services sector was a global business. This sector has evolved and adapted to international norms and has come up with a niche market. Today, Mauritius faces direct competition from international financial centers. The product offerings and services have to evolve to match the international trend. It is also crucial to have the professionals with the right skills to serve these new areas. Following a skill gap survey conducted by my ministry in April 2022, it was observed that skills in specific sectors were missing, namely wealth management, family office, virtual asset sector. In section 13.1 of the Economic Development Board Act, a framework for the expert occupation permit will be included to cater for the above sector of activities. This will give the opportunity for high-caliber professionals to work in the Mauritius International Finance Center, thereby increasing our service level and putting us at par with other major IFCs. Companies Act. As per the Financial Stability Report of the Bank of Mauritius, the global business sector forex deposit amounted to $12 billion as at June 2023. And this represents 32.3% of the total deposits of the banking sector. With regard to amendment proposed to the Companies Act as a means to protect the jurisdiction, the Financial Services Commission, FSC, will now have to provide its green light for a company to be removed from the register of companies. This will increase the soundness of the system and ensure the financial stability. Banking Act, Mr. Speaker, sir. as matters stand now in the Banking Act, it is stated that, and I quote, no director or senior officer or employee of any financial institution shall be at the same time a director or senior officer or an employee of any other financial institution except with the approval of the central bank, unquote. With a proposed amendment in section 47, subsection 2, provision is being made to include licensee under the National Payment Systems Act. I believe that by including the licensee of the National Payment System Act, this will give enhanced protection to the payment ecosystem and increase governance. Financial Reporting Act. Section 2B of the Financial Reporting Act is being amended. Henceforth, definition of public interest entity does not include a global business corporation or an authorized company under the Financial Services Act. Authorized companies, AC, in Mauritius were introduced in 2018 to attract foreign investment by offering a favorable regulatory environment. ACs are subject to minimal reporting requirements, benefiting from tax exemptions and reduced compliance obligations compared to other companies in Mauritius. However, potential challenges arise if ACs are classified as public interest entities, PIE, triggering additional compliance burdens under the Financial Reporting Act, FRA. This could contradict initial promises of regulatory relief and deter foreign investors, impacting Mauritius' reputation as an international financial center. ACs primarily serve private stakeholders with limited public interest impact, and the imposition of public interest entities obligations could undermine the jurisdiction's competitiveness and economic growth objectives. It is noteworthy to mention that compliance requirements of a public interest entity under the FRA are as follows. 1. Where a public interest entity is required under any enactment to prepare a financial statement or report, it shall ensure that the financial statement or report is in compliance with the financial reporting requirements of this Act or any other relevant enactment, any regulations or rules made under this Act and with the IFRS. 2. Every public interest entity shall adopt and report on corporate governance in accordance with the National Code of Corporate Governance. The preparation of financial statements and the adoption and reporting on the principles of the NCCG will all be enforcing additional burdens on the ACs. What exacerbates the situation is that these were burdens which the investors were promised relief from by virtue of Section 71(8)(10) and 11 of the Financial Services Act as a benefit of setting up an AC in the Mauritian jurisdiction. The loss of AC businesses as a result of additional unforeseen compliance requirements would not only impact the GDP contribution of the financial services to the economy of Mauritius, but may also adversely impact the reputation of Mauritius as an IFC, which promotes the ease of doing business, more specifically with regards to structures like ACs. Today, international investors are drawn to the Mauritius IFC for cross-border investments owing to its good repute. Investors are offered with a choice to opt for an AC to conduct cross-border investment. The effects of the growth of the financial services sector are clearly visible through the figures. The Economic Development Board, EDB, has published the figures which set the narrative on the impact of the financial services sector on the economy. As of 2022, the financial services sector has had a 13.5% GDP contribution and has seen a growth rate of 4.2%. Additionally, according to the latest statistics published by the FSE, there were a total of 6,300 live ACs as of December 2023. These figures clearly demonstrate the impact cross-border investment vehicles, including the AC, have had on our economy. These peaks would have been difficult to attain if investors did not prefer our jurisdiction for their cross-border investments. The boastful figures can also be attributed to the fact that the investors trust our robust legal framework and what the benefits provided, and that the benefits provided to their businesses under our laws are conducive to their growth. Hence, the amendment to the FRA is yet another step to consolidate ease of doing business in Mauritius and to increase our competitiveness. Financial Services Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, amendments are being brought to the Financial Services Act to increase the ease of doing business and to streamline the application process by the Financial Services Commission, FSC. Currently, application of license is catered for under Section 16 to 18 of Financial Services Act. And presently, there is no time frame within which the FSC needs to process a license and reach a decision. A time frame of 10 working days is part of the government's objective to increase ease of doing business and to enhance the Mauritius IFC jurisdiction. The time frame will start running once the application is deemed complete by the Financial Services Commission. The Commission will beef up its resources, both human and technological, to reach the said objective. Deepening on the type of licenses issued by the Financial Services Commission, the Commission will provide an indicative table of time frames to process an issue of licenses. This is in line with the need to provide clarity and certainty for investors. This is also in line with our strategy to increasing business in Africa and in India. Furthermore, by capping the number of days to 15 for the service provider to submit information following a request from the Financial Services Commission, this will accelerate the application process. The FSC is fully committed to implementing the above measures so as to ensure more efficient applications processing and reduction of turnaround time. The quality of applications also will have to be improved in order to avoid deemed withdrawal. The industry players have welcomed government's policies to improve turnaround time for application of licenses. This will enhance the attractiveness of the Mauritius IFC and thus allowing us to address challenges that the jurisdiction is facing with respect to increased competition from other IFCs. Those provisions would be enforceable as from 1st October this year, that is 2024. And in the next couple of months, the Financial Services Commission will issue a series of FSC rules and other guidance with respect to same. It must be noted that the above provisions will only be applicable for financial services licenses. We are confident that the above mentioned policy measures and their implementation will lead to the orderly growth of the financial services sector as well as the global business sector. Freeport Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, the activities of a GBC have been extended to Freeport as per amendments brought to the Freeport Act. This includes building, developing, and managing by the enterprise of its own infrastructural facilities, warehouses, cold storage, etc. With the idea of improving the business environment, this groundbreaking initiative will encourage more international companies to set up in Mauritius and enable them to carry out more activities. This will impact positively on employment. Income Tax Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, as per amendments to the Income Tax Act, the definition of securities has been amended to provide a clear classification as to where virtual assets and tokens fall for recording purposes. In Subpart C, under the second schedule of the same Act, provision is being made for partial exemption for companies holding a payment intermediary services PIS license and robotic and artificial intelligence enabled advisory services license issued by the Financial Services Commission. In the view of making Mauritius a fintech hub, these changes provide certainty to investors making use of the fintech landscape. National Pensions Act. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a caring and responsible government, we need to ensure that the contribution of our people in pension funds will yield enough return so that our people can enjoy a financially stable retirement. Having a representative of the Ministry of Financial Services and Good Governance at the level of NPF and NSF Investment Committee, as per amendment that will be brought to the National Pensions Act, will definitely help in achieving this objective. And I note that my colleague, Honorable Mrs. Do Yao, has welcomed this idea as well. The Virtual Asset and Initial Token Offering Services Act 2021 to consolidate. Mr. Speaker, sir, currently Section 15 of the Vitus Act provides for an obligation on the Virtual Asset Service Provider, VASP, to seek the approval of the Financial Services Commission prior to the appointment of a senior executive. Section 15 of the Vitus Act 2021 is being amended in order to provide further clarity in the law. The proposed amendment will impose a clear statutory obligation on a VASP to appoint or have a senior executive at all times. This will give additional comfort to the investors and better quality of service, with a key element in making Mauritius a fintech hub for the region. Financial Crimes Commission Act. Asset recovery is a vital component of an effective anti-money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism regime. Confiscation, amongst others, prevents criminal property from being laundered and reinvested, reducing, therefore, the rewards of crime and ensuring that victims receive their due restitution. As we face the growing complexities of financial crimes, it is crucial that decisive actions are taken to continuously enhance our efforts. In this respect, the amendments to the Financial Crimes Commission Act will further strengthen the asset recovery framework in Mauritius to ensure that it remains comprehensive, effective, and in conformity with international standards. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the face of unprecedented global challenges, we have demonstrated resilience and resolve, uniting as a nation to overcome adversity. Whether it was navigating the complexities of the pandemic, addressing social inequalities, or confronting environmental threats, we have stood together, shoulder to shoulder, in pursuit of a better tomorrow. The Budget 2024-2025 reaffirms our commitment to building a future where every individual has the opportunity to thrive and succeed. And with the adoption of the Finance Bill today, we are providing wings to our Mauritian dream. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Dr. the Honorable Chakuri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. At the very outset, allow me to wish you every possible success in your new responsibilities as Speaker of this August Assembly. Monsieur le Président, merci de me donner l'occasion d'intervenir sur the Finance Miscellaneous Provision Bill number 10 of 2024. Ce projet de loi comporte des amendements à une série de lois, et notamment la loi sur la Consumer Protection, Prices and Supplies Control Act, la Fair Trading Act et la Competition Act. Ces amendements ne sont pas de simples mises à jour administratives, ils sont des réformes essentielles qui amélioreront de façon significative la protection des consommateurs. Ils vont aussi favoriser des pratiques commerciales équitables et garantiront la transparence et l'équité sur notre marché. Monsieur le Président, dans le paysage numérique qui est en constante évolution, il est impératif que nos lois suivent les avancées technologiques. La redéfinition du terme « supply » pour inclure les transactions en ligne et électroniques est la preuve que ce gouvernement reconnaît la part grandissante que joue le commerce électronique dans notre société. Avec de plus en plus de consommateurs qui se tournent vers les achats en ligne, il est crucial que les protections attachées aux achats conventionnels soient étendues aux achats numériques. Cela garantit que les consommateurs soient protégés contre la fraude, les publicités trompeuses et les pratiques déloyales quand ils ont recours aux achats en ligne qui prennent de plus en plus d'ampleur. Monsieur le Président, à travers les amendements proposés, il y aura désormais des dispositions légales qui devront être scrupuleusement respectées par les opérateurs de commerce en ligne. Par exemple, comme les magasins et autres points de vente physiques, pour le commerce en ligne, les prix devront être affichés de façon claire et visible. Outre les prix pratiqués, tous les coûts supplémentaires, notamment les frais de livraison, les taxes et les frais de manutention, devront être clairement indiqués. Cela permettra aux consommateurs de connaître le coût total avant de faire un achat, évitant ainsi toute charge cachée. Les nouvelles provisions de la loi incluent aussi la nécessité d'une tarification transparente, d'une publicité honnête et de politiques de retour claires, créant ainsi des conditions de concurrence équitables pour toutes les entreprises, quel que soit leur mode de fonctionnement. Les consommateurs achetant des produits en ligne auront les mêmes droits que ceux achetant dans des magasins et autres commerces physiques, y compris le droit à des descriptions de produits précises, la possibilité de retourner des produits défectueux et la protection contre les activités frauduleuses. Avec toutes ces conditions réunies, les consommateurs pourront effectuer leur achat en ligne en toute confiance et avec la même tranquillité d'esprit qu'ils ont dans les environnements de vente au détail physique. Je tiens également à souligner quelques changements majeurs qui seront apportés grâce à ces amendements. Premièrement, la Fair Trading Act sera modifiée pour inclure la réglementation du commerce électronique. Un nouveau paragraphe sera ajouté à la section 8 pour réglementer spécifiquement le commerce en ligne. Cela permettra d'assurer que les transactions digitales soient réglementées de manière adéquate, offrant ainsi une protection accrue aux consommateurs dans l'espace numérique. De plus, une nouvelle section 12A sera introduite, permettant aux officiers de mon ministère de régler tout différend entre un consommateur et un commerçant à travers la médiation. Cela offre une voie rapide et efficace pour résoudre les litiges, réduisant ainsi le besoin de longues procédures judiciaires. Monsieur le Président, nous ne sommes pas seuls dans cette démarche. À l'échelle mondiale, il y a une forte tendance à renforcer la protection des consommateurs en réponse aux défis posés par la numérisation et la mondialisation. Des pays du monde entier adoptent des lois complètes sur la protection des consommateurs qui traitent de questions telles que la fraude en ligne, la confidentialité des données et les transactions transfrontalières. En modifiant notre loi sur la protection des consommateurs, nous alignons notre législation aux meilleures pratiques internationales, démontrant notre engagement à protéger nos citoyens et à favoriser un marché équitable. L'un des principaux amendements est l'exigence d'une indication claire et transparente des prix de vente. Chaque commerçant doit s'assurer que les étiquettes de prix soient placées de manière visible et en roupies mauriciennes. Cette transparence est essentielle pour la confiance des consommateurs, garantissant qu'il n'y a pas de coûts cachés ou de frais inattendus. Les nouvelles dispositions pour l'affichage des prix sont particulièrement remarquables. Chaque commerçant est tenu de s'assurer que les étiquettes de prix proposées à la vente soient placées à proximité des produits concernés. Cette normalisation garantit la clarté et évite toute incompréhension ou mauvaise interprétation. Pour les commerçants acceptant des devises étrangères, le prix de vente en devises étrangères doit également être indiqué, y compris toutes les commissions ou taux de conversion. Cela garantit que les consommateurs soient pleinement informés des implications de coûts lorsqu'ils payent en devises étrangères. Toute annonce de réduction de prix doit indiquer le prix précédent appliqué pendant une période déterminée avant la réduction. Cela signifie que les consommateurs peuvent avoir confiance que les réductions annoncées sont authentiques. Le prix précédent doit être le prix le plus bas appliqué pendant les 30 jours précédant la réduction de prix. Cela empêche l'inflation artificielle des prix avant l'application des réductions. Des exceptions sont faites pour les produits périssables et les produits sur le marché depuis moins de 30 jours, reflétant les considérations pratiques dans ces cas. Monsieur le Président, si plus d'un prix est affiché simultanément pour des produits ou services, le consommateur doit être facturé au prix le plus bas affiché. Cela protège les consommateurs contre les surfacturations dues à des affichages de prix conflictuels. Dans le cas où un ancien prix a été entièrement recouvert et obscurci par un nouveau prix, le nouveau prix doit être considéré comme le prix affiché. Cela garantit la clarté et évite tout litige sur le prix applicable. Monsieur le Président, si un prix affiché contient une erreur involontaire et évidente, le commerçant n'est pas tenu de vendre à ce prix une fois l'erreur corrigée et le consommateur informé. Cette disposition protège les commerçants contre les erreurs authentiques, tout en s'assurant que les consommateurs soient rapidement informés du prix correct. De plus, des dispositions sont prises pour protéger les commerçants contre des actes malveillants tels que les prix altérés, défigurés, couverts, supprimés ou obscurcis par une personne non autorisée. Monsieur le Président, pour garantir le respect de ces protections renforcées, nous augmentons les sanctions en cas de non-conformité. L'amende maximale passera de 300 000 roupies à 500 000 roupies et la peine d'emprisonnement sera prolongée de 5 à 7 ans. Ces sanctions plus sévères servent de puissants moyens de dissuasion contre les violations et souligne notre engagement en faveur de la protection des consommateurs. De plus, les amendements donnent aux officiers de mon ministère le pouvoir d'agir face aux infractions, garantissant une application rapide et efficace de la loi. Le régime pour l'application des fixed penalties a été renforcé et simplifié, le rendant plus efficace pour traiter les infractions mineures et ainsi préserver l'efficacité de notre cadre de protection des consommateurs. Monsieur le Président, permettez-moi de souligner que de nombreux pays, notamment ceux de l'Union européenne, ont des lois strictes concernant la protection des consommateurs. Ces lois incluent des exigences claires en matière d'indication des prix, la réglementation des transactions en ligne et des mécanismes d'application robustes. S'aligner sur de telles normes protège non seulement nos consommateurs, mais renforce également notre compétitivité mondiale et en favorisant un environnement commercial transparent et digne de confiance. Monsieur le Président, la Competition Act est aussi amendée pour garantir que toutes les enquêtes soient menées de manière efficace, impartiale et équitable. Le changement principal concerne la section 67, qui est amendée pour élargir la marge de manœuvre du directeur exécutif et établir un processus clair pour traiter les désaccords entre le directeur exécutif et les commissaires. Cela fait suite au jugement de la Cour suprême qui avait mis en exergue ce manquement. Ce changement vise à rendre la Competition Commission plus transparente. Cela garantit que toutes les enquêtes soient menées de manière approfondie et qu'il existe un processus équitable pour résoudre les désaccords, créant ainsi un environnement plus juste et compétitif à Maurice. Monsieur le Président, ces amendements constituent un effort complet pour moderniser notre cadre de protection des consommateurs, l'aligner aux meilleures pratiques internationales et répondre aux besoins évolutifs de notre marché. À travers ces amendements, ce gouvernement démontre son engagement à consolider la structure pour la protection des consommateurs. En ce faisant, nous protégeons non seulement nos citoyens, mais nous établissons également une norme d'excellence en matière de droits des consommateurs qui résonne à l'échelle mondiale. Je profite de cette occasion pour remercier tous les officiers de mon ministère et j'ai aussi une pensée spéciale pour l'ancienne Head du Consumer Affairs Unit, Madame Amita Ganesh, qui a pris sa retraite la semaine dernière. Je vous remercie, Monsieur le Président.
Honorable François.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for this opportunity to add my voice on this debate pertaining to the Finance Miscellaneous Provision Bill number 10 of 2024. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to join the other honourable members to extend my congratulations to you on your election as a new young Speaker of the National Assembly. I wish you a successful and progressive mission ahead for your speakership while serving our democratic institution and the Republic. I also seize this opportunity to thank the former Speaker, Honorable Suivez GOSK, for his speakership and insights towards our National Assembly. I shared some outstanding working relationships as a patriot and on official missions with him and other honourable members from both sides of the House, and especially on the Association des parlementaires des États membres de la Commission de l'Océan Indien, l'ABCOI. I wish him well and good health ahead. Mr. Speaker, sir, coming back to the bill, the object of this bill is to provide for the implementation of measures announced in the budget speech 2024-2025 and for matters connected, consequential and incidental thereto. Tomorrow is ours. is the budget 2024-2025 theme presented by the Dr. Honorable Padayachi, which surely carries the government philosophy for economic dynamism, a sustainable and inclusive Republic of Mauritius, and building our future together as one nation, one people, and one nation. The Honorable Minister reiterated, same as it has been entrenched in the budget in the interest of our whole Republic. And my intervention today relates briefly to the amendments pertaining to a few clauses of the bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Veterinary Council Act 2020 is amended. You will note that there is a shortage of veterinarians in our Republic, as we are still facing animal diseases such as foot and mouth disease, despite it is not that alarming. The mandatory implementation of a national livestock identification system as per Clause 4, Animal Diseases Act amended, requires that the Division of Veterinary Services, DVS, to implement such system for all farmers, farms, slaughterhouses, quarantine facilities, isolation facilities, game handling facilities, apiaries, and breeding facilities. Mr. Speaker, sir, you will realize that in Rodrigues, for a population of around 40,000 animal heads, there are only 2 veterinarians. We have recently witnessed the problems of exportation of live animals from Rodrigues through an unwanted monopoly of one importer. The veterinarians even had to disembark some animals from the ship, having not been tested and obtained the necessary veterinary health clearances. A very responsible decision to ensure that no transmission of any pathogenic agents from Rodrigues to Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, sir, Clause 93. The Veterinary Council Act 2020 is amended at Section 19 to provide for a new paragraph where a person who holds a degree, a diploma, or an equivalent qualification in veterinary medicine and surgery to providing under the responsibility of a veterinary surgeon such veterinary treatment to an animal as the veterinary surgeon may authorize. I trust this will allow the Council to facilitate and obtain recruitment of more veterinary officers as per the qualifications specified to serve the whole Republic. Rodrigues certainly requires additional veterinarians to support our livestock sector development. Mr. Speaker, sir, Clause 36 Forest and Reserve Act is amended by inserting after Section 8 a new Section 8A, removal of protected plants. The conservator of forests shall, for a national project or in the interest of public safety, authorize in writing a person to remove a protected plant on any state land or reserve. This clause gives powers to the conservator of forests and will certainly facilitate not only the removal but also the displacement of endemic trees at the new Plaine Corail Airport site Rodrigues for the forthcoming Plaine Corail Airport development projects, which we, OPR party, fully endorse. Mr. Speaker, sir, following the problems faced by many artists post-COVID-19, government is committed to provide support to our local artists. Clause 41 Income Tax Act is amended for expenditure incurred to support artists, where in an income year, a company incurs expenditure to support the work of a professional in the arts. It may deduct from its gross income of that income year twice the amount of such expenditure. This is a commendable incentive for many artists who are actually having hard times to earn a living. Mr. Speaker, sir, the new Clause 66A, donation to NGO by a company through electronic means to an NGO which is involved in combating drugs abuse, preventing of gender-based violence, or poverty alleviation, it shall be allowed in that income year a deduction from its gross income of an amount representing thrice the amount of such donation. The maximum deduction is 1 million rupees, which with this measure will lead to a maximum deduction of 3 million rupees as tax deduction by a company. I hope this will encourage many companies to contribute in the fight against drugs, gender-based violence, and poverty alleviation. And here, I will plead and request companies who wish to contribute to pay particular attention to Rodrigues' needs as regards to limited resources they at, through NGOs like Caritas and crack anti-drug group in their fight against poverty and drug abuse. Clause 77, removal of Sand Act is amended by inserting the new definition for beach nourishment, which means the adding of sand and other sediments of sand to a beach for the purposes of preventing beach erosion and increasing the width of a beach. Mr. Speaker, sir, climate change is accelerating coastal erosion worldwide, and Rodrigues is no exception as a small developing state for its 14 proclaimed public beaches, which no one wants to see them vanish in the years to come. It is clear that over the last century, Rodrigues have lost a few meters of shorelines of its pristine beaches through beach erosion and degradation, mainly observed at Gravier, Port-Sud-Est, Caverne-Provert, and Grand Bay. And in the case of Grand Bay, it is observed that the beach has retreated by approximately 30 to 60 over 130 meters of shoreline. There have been serious loss of coconut trees, fiddle trees over the years. Rodrigues can't afford to continue losing its beautiful sandy beaches. Thus, controlling coastal erosion of our sandy beaches, which are key tourist attraction, leisure, and recreational values for our local people, is of critical importance to our socio-economic development. It is imperative that remedial actions are undertaken to protect our beaches. What is required is sustainable mitigation actions to address the problem. Mr. Speaker, sir, since 2018, the Regional Assembly has engaged in beach nourishment and reprofiling to add sediments, that is, sand dredge or removed from river mouths onto the erode part of the beach, thus to help create a natural slope and restore the beach. To mitigate the longshore drift of sediment, there is installation of geotextile sandbags groins to protect approximately 0.5 kilometers of beaches from wave and tidal induced erosion, while allowing the surrounding community to be involved by participating in the project and receiving financial incentive. Mr. Speaker, sir, this bill further provides a new section at 9A, removal of sand for beach nourishment, for authorizing a person for the purpose of beach nourishment, remove sand and other sediments of sand from the sea or river. This is subject to an EIA license or approval. Now, for government projects, does removal of sand and other sediments of sands from a dredging area will be exempted or still requires an EIA license or approval? I question. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, Clause 83, Social Contribution and Social Benefits Act 2021 is amended at subclause 30BB, Equal Chance Allowance. Mr. Speaker, sir, yesterday on my way to the Plaine Corail Airport in Rodrigues, I assisted an ambulance attendant while he was transferring a bedridden lady returning back home from treatment in Mauritius to help her getting into her house. At that particular point in time, one question came into my mind: how this incapacitated lady will cope alone if she does not receive a 24-hour carers and basic support required as a bedridden person. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is where I realized how grateful this caring government is to come up with this equal chance allowance for payment of 2,000 rupees for bedridden next of kin, spouse, father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, brother or sister of that person, or of his spouse to one adult member of a household where the household earnings do not exceed 20,000 rupees as from July 2024 to June 2025. This bill further provides for payment of a school allowance of 2,000 rupees for the months of July 2024 to June 2025 to an eligible child who is aged not less than 3 years, but below the age of 10 years. Mr. Speaker, sir, how many parents and children are being relieved by this measure when MRA pays them the school allowance of 2,000 rupees, irrespective of the number of children, especially for our Rodigan brothers and sisters? I note that in addition to the school allowance payable under subsection 2, an additional sum equivalent to that allowance will be paid for the month of December 2024, the coming month of December 2024, 13e mois aussi pour gagner. You will be surprised that today MRA has become a sweet name in the mouth of many out there. Honorable Dr. Padayachi. A sweet name, yeah. Mr. Speaker, sir.
Address the Speaker, please.
Yes, surely, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I won't go any further. And with these words in support to the Finance Miscellaneous Provision Bill as presented by the Honorable Minister of Finance for an economic dynamism, a sustainable and inclusive Republic of Mauritius, and building our future together, I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Ganu.
Mr. Speaker, sir, firstly, allow me also to congratulate you on your appointment as the new Speaker to this House. Mr. Speaker, sir, late Jawaharlal Nehru said, the House represents the will of the people. The Speaker represents and is the symbol of the House. The Speaker, therefore, symbolizes the will of the people. This bill, Mr. Speaker, sir, is an important piece of legislation, bringing amendments to some 95 enactments relating to measures announced in the budget speech 24-25, and for matters connected, consequential or incidental thereto. Monsieur le Président, je disais il y a quelques minutes de cela à une conférence de presse que probablement le Finance Bill est le projet de loi le plus important dans notre calendrier parlementaire. C'est pourquoi il est le plus important parce que, aussi excellent que le budget puisse être, il ne sera que des effets d'annonce et restera lettre morte sans être suivi par un Finance Bill. C'est pourquoi, Monsieur le Président, de ce côté de la Chambre, nous ne cesserons pas de dénoncer l'opposition pour leur comportement honteux en choisissant de s'absenter de l'hémicycle à un moment où un projet de loi aussi crucial que le Finance Bill fait l'objet de nos débats. Après leur comportement indigne et odieux lors de votre élection jeudi dernier, Monsieur le Président, aujourd'hui, l'opposition persiste et signe. L'histoire les jugera. As for me, I am pleased to be given this opportunity to intervene on this bill, in so much as clauses 59 and 79 relate directly to my ministry and closely pertain to the setting up of an enabling framework for e-mobility, while also allowing the National Land Transport Authority to better categorize and classify motor cars to be reckoned as classic or vintage. Climate change is already wreaking havoc in so many parts of the world, and it is no more a myth. The recent events in terms of unpredictable torrential rains and prolonged droughts are harbingers of even more serious catastrophes that act as a Damocles sword over our heads if we do not react immediately and boldly. We are therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, at a crossroad where we cannot afford complacency and need to adopt fleet electrification as a means to make our transport system more sustainable. Against this alarming backdrop, we are being urged to call to arms against our common enemy, carbon emissions. This adversary can be fought and the battle can be won only if we pursue our efforts towards decarbonization and set an enabling framework for e-mobility to thrive in. That is to say, Mr. Speaker, sir, mobility has never been before a subject matter under so much global scrutiny, as on the one hand, it is of imperative necessity to meet our social and economic needs, while on the other hand, it is having a detrimental effect on our environment. This government is fully alive to the fact that we have to reverse the trend in emissions, and particularly in the transport sector. Reckoning that the land transport sector is the second largest emitter, accounting for some 28% of overall emissions, that is some 1,132 kilotons of CO2, we can therefore deduce that the growing trend in emissions arises from a steady increase in vehicle use over the past decades. That is a compounded growth of some 6% for the past 20 years up to 2019, which is the pre-COVID year. It is therefore our duty, Mr. Speaker, sir, to identify fitting remedial measures and ensure their successful crystallization. Sir, vehicular fleet in our country boasts of nearly 690,000 vehicles as at May of this year, consisting of around 321,000 cars, 245,000 two-wheelers, while the remaining being other types of vehicle. We can therefore have an inkling of the level of emissions generated from the transport sector, where 95% of the emissions are from cars, 3% from the two-wheelers, and the remaining 2% from other classes of vehicle. In fact, if we are to remain in a do-nothing trajectory, we would be reaching more than 1,300 kilotons of emissions by 2015. And this apocalyptic scenario is outright a non-starter, as we do not want to bequeath a carbon-driven transport system. Rather, we want to reverse and reduce emissions. And this is the decarbonization pathway to reduce emission by 74 kilometers CO2 by the end of this decade. So, it takes minute planning and bold measures to achieve fleet electrification. And this is exactly what this government is doing in a progressive yet carefully devised manner. This is what this government has been doing for the past years, and had it not been for COVID-19, where our immediate attention was drawn towards saving lives, we would have been further ahead. In fact, according to the International Energy Agency, electric vehicles are instrumental to decarbonize road transport, the more so that road transportation makes up to 16% of global emissions. It is no secret to all that exponential growth has been witnessed globally in the sale of electric vehicles, along with enhanced range and autonomy and wider availability of model, which now make electric cars more appealing to the public. In fact, some countries are even targeting to do away from fuel-propelled vehicles in the next 10 to 15 years, and we cannot afford to lose pace and lag behind. Sir, the high upfront acquisition costs have been a limiting factor and stalled penetration of electric vehicles in our country. However, as a visionary government, we ensured that through a wide array of fiscal instruments, we eliminate barriers that were impeding the shift towards e-mobility. Therefore, we are the government to have introduced impactful measures to decarbonize the transport sector. We are the one to have put sustainable mobility back on the agenda. The continued increase in electric vehicles recorded over the past 3 years in our country is therefore far from being a coincidence. It is rather the result of concerted and planned actions which led to a higher uptake in relative terms of electric vehicles in Mauritius. In fact, the number of vehicles increased by threefold since 2019, and we are continuing to witness an increase in the number of vehicles registered, reaching over 1,000 new vehicles last year. Sir, true it is that ultimately the choice to acquire an electric vehicle rests solely with the individual. However, we also acknowledge that the price of a vehicle is a determining factor at the time of purchase, though there has now been a shift from the initial acquisition cost towards the life cycle cost of a vehicle, that is, the expenditure to be incurred by the owner over the useful lifetime of the vehicle. It is with this in mind that this government has made electric vehicles more easily accessible by removing the taxes associated therewith. In so doing, we are democratizing the ownership of electric vehicles. In addition to setting the scene for the adoption of a greater number of such vehicles, we went a little further so that individuals could be allowed to power their e-vehicles through a photovoltaic installation not exceeding 10 kilowatt and at the same time export any surplus to the grid. Sir, as regards promoting electric buses, I need to inform the House that the bus modernization scheme was reviewed last year to allow for an enhanced subsidy allocation to promote the uptake of electric vehicles. Bus operators are now eligible to a higher quantum amounting to 30% of the price of an electric bus, subject to a maximum of 3.5 million rupees per bus. Furthermore, the IFCM would now be providing loans at a concessional rate of 2% in order to assist bus operators to acquire electric buses. We are confident that with our bold measures, more and more electric buses will be in operation in the near future. And from my interaction with the bus operators, they are indeed keen to operate such buses, but need an adaptation period. In fact, what we have learned through the pilot phase of the electric bus at the NTC is that an electric bus results in significant savings in terms of maintenance costs, in addition to net benefits when comparing fuel costs against electric chargers. It is yet a matter of comfort that the NTC is keen on further electrifying its fleet and had come up with a fleet renewal plan where it intends to replace 370 buses in the next few years with focus on electric buses. We are currently doing needful for the first phase of the project, and discussions have reached quite far, and I hope to come up shortly with the final timeline with regard to the first batch of the 200 electric buses to be sourced by NTC. We are not only providing financial incentives, but we are also planning the way ahead. This is the reason why a fully fledged report was commissioned in 2020 by my colleague, the Minister of Energy and Public Utilities, and this roadmap sets out the way forward and the various mechanisms to be put in place to achieve fleet electrification. Mr. Speaker, sir, according to the 10-year electric vehicle integration roadmap for Mauritius, which clearly articulates how we are to induce the electrification of our vehicle fleet. According to the medium electric vehicle growth scenario, we are to record some 26,000 e-vehicles by 2030, making this category of vehicles accounting for 15% of new car sales. So, Speaker, sir, fleet electrification does not only involve government, but we also need the active participation of the private sector and for the market to adjust accordingly. The transition towards a greener transport system, therefore, requires the support of all relevant stakeholders. We are therefore particularly appreciative of the efforts made by players of the automobile industry into making charging facilities more accessible. The electrification of the fleet also constitutes a unique opportunity for petrol serving stations to reinvent themselves and join the bandwagon of clean and green players. With their intimate knowledge of the automobile industry, they can seize this opportunity to contribute in our national efforts to decarbonize the industry. In fact, the transition to green mobility involves the active participation of all relevant stakeholders, and I make a call for them to partake in this endeavor. From initially only few charging facilities across the island, we now have more and more charging points strategically located throughout the country for the benefit of the citizens. We believe that e-mobility cannot thrive in the absence of an appropriate and enabling ecosystem, and this is why we need private sector initiative. Sir, the House will concur with me that electric mobility cannot operate in a vacuum, and the proper framework has to be in place. While we do need the initial surge in terms of fiscal instruments to ease the penetration of green mobility, at the same time, we need to have an adequate infrastructure to cater for the energy requirements of the e-vehicles. This is why provision is being made in the law to regulate the operation through this bill, to regulate the operation of public electric motor vehicle charging station by the National Land Transport Authority, as is already the case for petrol service station. These amendments to the Road Traffic Act will allow the NLTA, as a regulatory body to exercise due oversight on the operation of the public electric motor vehicle charging station in Mauritius and attach such conditions as may be appropriate for the orderly and safe operation thereof. Mr. Speaker, sir, likewise, the NLTA Act is also being amended to duly empower the NLTA to license and regulate public electric motor vehicle charging stations, so that entities granted with such a license are accountable and report to the regulatory body. In addition, the NLTA will be empowered to set standards for devices and equipment used in the charging of an electric motor vehicle in order to protect the public and safeguard their interests. This is required, Mr. Speaker, sir, as the operation of public electric motor vehicle charging stations cannot operate on their own, but needs to comply with such directives and code of practice as may be issued by the relevant authorities, and this for the orderly provision of charging facilities to the public. These amendments tend to further consolidate the electric vehicle ecosystem in our country, as we are laying the basis for the operation of electric vehicle charging facilities in Mauritius, and this while having in mind the safety and rights of owners of electric vehicles. Mr. Speaker, sir, electric vehicle being quite a nascent technology, and given the highly evolutive nature thereof, with significant research being conducted worldwide at our end, we must promote a collaborative approach so that we harness the full benefits of electric vehicle technology and further enhance the framework under which such vehicles would operate. To this end, provision is further being made under the NLTA Act to cooperate and collaborate with NLTA to cooperate and collaborate with relevant institutions in the discharge of their functions, and any enactment relating to electrical installations for the charging of an electric motor vehicle. These entities comprise the CB and the Utility Regulatory Board, and the aim is for the provision of charging facilities to be regulated in such a manner wherein the expertise of competent authorities is tapped in. Sir, provision has been duly made for the licensing regime in respect of this public electric motor vehicle charging station, inasmuch as the merits of any application thereof would be scrutinized and examined by the NLTA and the licensing board operating thereunder it. All such applications will be gauged on their merits, and for which the NLTA would be tasked to devise the eligibility criteria thereof and checklist, which would define the documentation and information to be submitted by any parties willing to provide such services. Moreover, as the licensing board of the NLTA has its own determination guidelines, it will be fairly easily for the NLTA to proceed with the determination of such application, and if the need arises, the NLTA may also rely on the support of entities endowed with the relevant technical expertise. Mr. Speaker, sir, likewise, the Rodrigues Transport Committee, which is duly empowered to license public service vehicles and petrol service stations in Rodrigues, will have its functions broadened, as the above entity will also be empowered to deliver such licenses in order to allow the operation of public electric motor vehicle charging stations in the island of Rodrigues on the same footing as in Mauritius, as we believe that electric mobility should be promoted also across the whole Republic. Sir, as we have favored a progressive and incremental approach, we have also borne in mind that electric vehicles have specificities on their own too, and their charging system does not have a closed fit as compared to petrol-propelled vehicles. This is why, and with a view to ensuring the safety of users, that appropriate regulations would be made under the Road Traffic Act to spell out the conditions to be met for the grant of a license by the NLTA, including the relevant requirements to be fulfilled by the promoter, so that there is no compromise as to the safety of the installations. These regulations will also allow for the transition process, wherein existing facilities will be taken into account and necessary transitional clauses will be taken care of at the time of finalizing the said regulations. We will also address our mind that the regulator and any relevant and competent authority are duly empowered to make inspections and checks so as to be comforted that all connections and installations have been made as per the agreed procedures and comply with relevant legislation. Mr. Speaker, sir, should it be that promoters and licensees fail to meet the requirements or conditions attached to their licenses, the NLTA will be duly empowered by virtue of these amendments to suspend or revoke the licenses after following all the relevant procedures. In general, the amendments have been couched in such a manner as to give wide powers to the NLTA on the same footing as in the case of petrol service station to exercise oversight over the charging stations and to take such actions, including disciplinary sanctions against persons not complying with the conditions attached to their license or those operating without a license. Mr. Speaker, sir, as I mentioned earlier, several actions have been taken to promote electric mobility. Now we are going a step further towards consolidating the framework for further promoting electric vehicles in our country. This is being done through the regulation of electric vehicle charging stations so that we do take on board the needs and general interests of the public for the licensing and operation of such facilities across the island, so in order that any such stations operate only after having exhaustively met all the criteria to the satisfaction of the NLTA and other authorities. For example, the location of such entities has to be carefully devised in terms of access and without impeding traffic flow. Mr. Speaker, sir, I come to another issue, the classic or the vintage motor cars. We have, sir, to make a distinction as to the type of motor vehicles operating in Mauritius, in as much as we need to be mindful to setting appropriate standards for vehicles to be reckoned as classic or vintage motor cars. To this end, amendments have been made under the Road Traffic Act and will pave the way for more clarity as to the definitions thereof, and wherein the age criterion, as is the case in the UK, will be the principal tenet for the classification thereof. Accordingly, the 40-year threshold will be used to define such a vehicle and will be used as the overarching yardstick to classify such vehicles. However, this does not mean per se that all motor vehicles aged 40 years or more being automatically categorized as such and be allowed to hit the roads. Indeed, any vehicles being used on the roads will still require a valid license and would have to continue to be examined by the NLTA to ascertain their roadworthiness. In addition, to better regulate the operation and licensing of these vehicles, appropriate regulations will follow so that the NLTA may attach such conditions as deemed relevant to ensure that these vehicles do not pose any safety issues and that the vehicle owners meet such requirements as may be specified by the NLTA. Through the making of these regulations, this will oust vehicles being automatically classified as a classic or vintage motor car by the mere operation of the law, as these vehicles will have to meet such conditions as deemed fit by the NLTA. In so doing, these vehicles will truly meet the intended meaning of being a classic or vintage motor car, as they will have to capture all the specificities and features that one would normally expect from such type of vehicles. However, due care will be taken at the time of drafting the regulations to ensure that the interest of existing owners of classic or vintage motor cars are not impaired, save that we will not compromise as regards the state and roadworthiness of such vehicles. Mr. Speaker, sir, to conclude, we need to remind ourselves of the stark reality that is, we only have one world which has borne the brunt of our unrestrained and at times ill-advised human-led development. We now need to partake in the global efforts to curtailing the temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. For this reason, we not only need to make it sustainable, but also a place where the next generation will have to live in the fear of being a victim of impending natural catastrophes. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have done. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. The Honourable Acting Prime Minister.
Monsieur le Président, avant d'entrer dans le vif du sujet et de décortiquer les dispositions de la loi des finances qui se réfèrent aux missions des deux ministères dont j'ai la responsabilité, permettez-moi deux remarques quant au contexte dans lequel ce débat aujourd'hui se tient. D'abord, Monsieur le Président, nous nous réunissons pour la première fois depuis votre désignation comme président de l'Assemblée le jeudi 18 juillet 2024, la semaine dernière. Ce jour-là, outre le comportement sans précédent de ces 3 députés suspendus et qui ont fait l'objet d'une motion, n'est-ce pas, plus tôt aujourd'hui, il s'est passé un deuxième événement, également sans précédent dans les annales de notre démocratie parlementaire et extrêmement grave, que je ne saurais passer sous silence. Ce jour-là, Monsieur le Président, alors que je m'apprête à gagner l'hémicycle, avant que ne débutent nos travaux, je découvre un attroupement des députés de l'opposition. Il me semblait que toutes et tous étaient là. Un attroupement qui bloquait l'accès, presque entièrement l'accès à l'hémicycle, et en particulier la porte qui se trouve à votre droite. Ces députés sont alors dans un état d'excitation extrême et très hostile. Je choisis, comme mon habitude, d'entrer par la porte qui se trouve à votre gauche, et je me fais alors insulter et traiter de tous les noms. Que d'insultes, que d'invectives. Et ce traitement, je ne suis pas le seul à le subir, car nombre de mes collègues ministres et députés en font l'expérience. Et il m'est rapporté que même des membres du personnel de l'Assemblée nationale auraient subi le même traitement. Monsieur le Président, de toutes mes années de députation, et moi j'ai connu les bancs de cette Assemblée nationale pour la première fois en 1991, je n'ai jamais connu une telle situation. Tout député, par définition un représentant du peuple, a le droit et le devoir en démocratie d'accéder à l'hémicycle pour participer aux travaux de l'Assemblée nationale. Et toute tentative d'entraver l'exercice de ce droit, de ce devoir, représente une atteinte on ne peut plus grave à la démocratie parlementaire. Jamais, au grand jamais, notre démocratie aura-t-elle témoigné d'un tel comportement indigne. Deuxième remarque, Monsieur le Président, l'absence consternante, atterrante, que dis-je, scandaleuse de toute l'opposition, à l'exception des députés du PMST à l'Assemblée nationale, leur absence de l'Assemblée nationale alors que nous débattons d'un projet de loi des plus importants. La loi des finances qui vient amender, je crois que mon collègue le ministre des Finances parlait de 93 textes de loi, 95 textes de loi ce matin, et cette loi des finances qui va traduire dans la loi et dans les faits les mesures budgétaires. Là aussi, y a-t-il un précédent? J'en doute. Une opposition absente des débats autour de la loi des finances. Pourquoi? Pourquoi l'opposition est-elle absente aujourd'hui? Je suis tellement étonné que je me pose la question, j'essaie de comprendre. Rappelez-vous, le 18 juillet dernier, jeudi dernier, l'opposition a justifié le boycott des travaux de votre élection, Monsieur le Président, en alléguant l'illégalité du procédé adopté pour la désignation du speaker. Eh bien, y a-t-il eu par la suite, vendredi, lundi, aujourd'hui, y a-t-il eu un recours légal? Y a-t-il eu une action devant nos cours de justice? Non. Non. Donc, ils ont réalisé qu'ils se sont trompés, lourdement trompés. Et soudain, aujourd'hui, ce n'est plus l'illégalité de votre désignation, mais l'absence de la levée de suspension à l'encontre de 3 députés qui devient la raison invoquée pour ne pas être présent. Pourtant, la levée des suspensions n'a rien à voir avec la désignation du speaker, du fait d'avoir un nouveau speaker. Cette suspension, elle peut être levée à l'initiative de l'opposition en présentant des excuses n'importe quand, avant ou après votre désignation. Elle peut être levée par une motion de l'exécutif qui aurait pu être introduite avant ou après votre désignation. Donc cette raison ne peut justifier leur absence aujourd'hui, le 23 juillet. Comment sinon expliquer leur présence avant le 23 juillet? Clairement, Monsieur le Président, ne nous voilons-nous pas la face. Il s'agit tout simplement, je dis ne pas se voiler la face, mais ils ont perdu la face quand ils ont allégué l'illégalité du procédé adopté pour votre désignation. Donc aujourd'hui, pour ne pas perdre la face et venir ici se soumettre à votre autorité, il faut trouver un autre prétexte, donc la levée de suspension des députés, dont la suspension ne date pas d'hier. Rien qu'un prétexte, Monsieur le Président, mais un prétexte permettant d'abdiquer devant leurs responsabilités, comme le disait dans la presse Monsieur le député Nando Boda, et je m'étonne de son absence. Lui qui disait qu'il se devait d'être à l'Assemblée nationale par respect pour le mandat que lui a confié l'électorat. Eh bien aujourd'hui, c'est une abdication, ni plus ni moins, devant leur responsabilité en démocratie d'être à l'Assemblée nationale et de participer au débat parlementaire. Quelle honte! Monsieur le Président, cela étant dit, je vais passer à la loi des finances. And I'll try to be to the point and brief. I take the floor because it is my duty as Minister of Housing on the one hand and Minister of Tourism on the other hand to explain the purport of the legislative amendments being brought by way of the finance bill for the benefit of other members of the House and of the public at large. So very quickly, first, Clause 46 of the bill relates to the Land Duties and Taxes Act. This is the law that provides for deeds of transfer when there is sale of land, sale of property, to carry payment of a tax. And so far in the law, the NHDC, the National Housing Development Corporation, was exempted from such duties or taxes. However, in the meantime, there has been a special purpose vehicle, the NSLD, National Social Living Development Corporation, that has been created. And what this clause will do is to add the NSLD to the 8th schedule and therefore exempt the NSLD, as is the case for the NHDC, from payment of registration duty, land transfer tax, and tax on transfer of leasehold rights on state land. Had we not done that, it would have meant, at worst, transferring the cost thereof to the purchaser, making these housing units even more expensive. At best, it would have meant a lot of bureaucratic procedures having regard to the payment of all these taxes. So this is the reason why Clause 46 of the Finance Bill is before us to be voted upon. Second, Clause 48 of the Finance Bill relates to the Le Mans Heritage Trust Fund Act. Now, as we all know, Le Mans is a very, very important part of our history. The whole of our nation has a very emotional attachment to Le Mans and what it represents. Le Mans is managed by Le Mans Trust Fund, which is administered by a board, which is comprised of representatives of various ministries: finance, arts and culture, agriculture, education, environment, but not the Ministry of Tourism. And yet, future of tourism is certainly the further development of cultural and historical tourism. The Apravasi Ghat is now a major attraction. Our new Intercontinental Museum of Slavery attracts more and more visitors. And the future of tourism resides in demonstrating to our visitors our rich historical and cultural past. So this clause very simply ensures that henceforth there will be a representative of the Ministry of Tourism sitting on the board and helping to devise initiatives, projects, considering the tourism dimension of the operation of the Le Mans Heritage Site, hours of opening, how we welcome visitors and guests. There is so much to be done, and I hope this provision will help us move in the right direction. Beyond this clause, Clause 49 amends the Local Government Act. That's another interesting point. As you know, Mr. Speaker, the Valuation Department of the Ministry of Housing is entrusted by law with the responsibility of compiling, maintaining the cadastral database and of determining the cadastral value. For instance, the Valuation Department has started this exercise having regard to the Municipal Council of Quatre Bornes, because it has been requested to compile, and it has been requested to compile the cadastral database for the city of Port Louis in the present financial year. However, the main issue that is encountered in this task, for instance, that we've experienced in Quatre Bornes, is collection of data that is accurate, that is transparent, and that would be admissible before a court of law. Now, that, at the present time, requires individually surveying each and every property. And you can imagine, Mr. Speaker, how time-consuming, how costly such an exercise is. So what the amendment provides for in the new subsection 2B, section 106, subsection 2B of the Local Government Act, is the ability to have recourse to data from aerial photography, satellite imagery, digital elevation models to assist in the valuation exercise and compilation and completion of the cadastral database. We believe this will be a more efficient, will allow for a more efficient, transparent, and effective way of pursuing the task of the Valuation Department, and will allow for a rapid completion of cadastral surveys. Next, I would like to speak about clause 56. This is the amendment to the Morcellement Act, which is a very important amendment. Right now, the law as it stands does not provide for what is being introduced, the concept of the green forest within proposed Morcellement. What pertains nowadays is a requirement of a planning policy guideline, which is not law, but it is issued under the Planning and Development Act, which requires provision of 2% of any development area in a Morcellement to be earmarked for a public open space with a minimum of 25 square meters for 20 plots. We're now going beyond that and writing into the law the requirement that, and this was announced in the budget speech, this was explained in the budget speech, that wherever there is a Morcellement of more than 5 arpents, including smart cities, 4% of the total area for development will have to be allotted for the development of a mini forest, and in particular with endemic trees. It has to do with environmental sustainability and the increasing challenges posed by climate change, obviously. But also the need to safeguard property and lives faced with the risk of flooding. And I know that my colleague, the Minister of Finance, feels very strongly about such issues after the experience, the unfortunate experience of recent years. It is important to note that the requirement will exclude standalone industrial projects, agricultural Morcellement, land parceling for the purpose of charity or religion, very importantly, a division in kind between co-heirs, ascendants and descendants, and subdivision of large plots that do not entail development. One of the challenges will be who will manage these green forests, because we certainly do not want such areas of land within Morcellement to be left à l'abandon or to become a site for people of the surrounding to throw their garbage, a dumping ground. So what do we do about it? The law introduces this conception of an association foncière, as exists in our Code Civil, in our civil code. But beyond that, if that is not the case, then the local authority will have the responsibility. Of course, my colleague, the Minister of Local Government, will worry about the resources to do this. And it is one of the challenges we shall face, and we intend to rise up to that challenge and work with local authorities, outsourcing, delegating, as may be appropriate, the responsibility to manage and maintain such green forests that should become an important part of the landscape of Mauritius in years to come. Let us not forget that the budget, the Minister of Finance referred to the need to increase tree coverage by 100 hectares annually over the next decade. Next, Mr. Speaker, the Removal of Sand Act. And this is where I'm so sorry that the opposition isn't here. We've heard such demagoguery concerning authorization to remove sand from the sea. But I would invite members of the House and members of the public to consider very carefully the provisions of the new provisions of the Removal of Sand Act. Forgive me, Mr. Speaker, I should have spoken of the Pagiometric Act, but I'll come back to that. So, removal of sand. I was initially very concerned because as far as back as 1996, when I was Minister of Fisheries and Marine Resources, I was instrumental in the first steps to completely ban extraction of sand from our seabed. Today, we are faced with a new phenomenon, the accelerated disappearance of our beaches. On the one hand, erosion of our beaches, and I won't repeat what the Minister of Finance said in the budget speech. The number of regions around the country, I think he referred to 37 kilometers of our coastline that are now degraded in the north, in the south, in the east, in the west. We know that the level of the sea level is rising much faster in Mauritius, 5.6 millimeters annually, as compared to the global average of 3.3 millimeters annually. And today, our hotels, many of our hotels, are directly affected. Just go and visit the Trouaux Hotel, one of our oldest hotels, and the region of Trouaux generally. But it's the same phenomenon we are witnessing around the island. On the one hand, sand erosion. On the other hand, sand accretion, blocking the canals within the lagoon for our fishermen, hindering activities of people relying on the sea, fishermen who rely on the sea for their living, creating new challenges for our hotels. The Ile-Yosef region, go and see the what was called the Tues Rock, which is now the one and only. Indeed. So we had to do something about it. And this bill, this matter has been the subject of a lot of work. I remember a high-level meeting between the government, chaired by the Prime Minister, with Business Mauritius, debating this issue, which is now perceived as a direct and immediate threat to our development effort. And the finance bill brings about, with this amendment, at least part of the answer. We're introducing the concept of beach nourishment, which did not exist in the law. We are introducing dredging areas, which will be areas specifically designated for that purpose, to allow, therefore, removal of sand from dredging areas for the purpose of beach nourishment. But it is not any Tom, Dick, or Harry who may tomorrow morning go and remove sand from the lagoon. Again, I think Honourable Johanna Béranger should have been here to listen to the facts. If Mr. Speaker, one considers the new Section 9A, removal of sand for beach nourishment, one will take cognizance of the long list of very stringent conditions which any operator will have to face. Permits, EIA license, detailed project plan, report on mitigation measures, proof of public consultation, removal of sand only in the presence of an officer who has to endorse post facto the permit, and continuous monitoring, regular reports. Beach nourishment is an imperative. There is no getting away from it. The importance of conditions is there, and we have responded to that challenge. I'll go back to the Pagéométrique Act. Now, this is another important matter, Mr. Speaker. Up until now, in the law, there was a prohibition to hold more than one campement site lease. Now, what happens, Mr. Speaker, if you are lucky enough to hold a campement site lease, and by virtue of the passing of your parents, there is another campement site lease that needs, as per our Code Civil, to be shared out amongst the lawful inheritors. It is illegal, as per the law. Is it constitutional? How does it tally with the provisions of the Civil Code? Well, over these last few years, we have received a number of representations, and we had to do something about it. So this law removes the prohibition. But, of course, the possibility of a person holding more than one campement site lease, in effect, will be very limited. 2 campement site lease, 1 inherited. If your parents are married under the séparation de biens regime 3, this will be truly exceptional, but at least it will allow for conformity between the Pagéométrique Act and the Code Civil. Then, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to touch very quickly upon the Pagéométrique amendment will be accompanied by an amendment of the corresponding section in the State Lands Act, which provides that not more than 1 lease shall be held by a person directly or indirectly at any time. That is now subject to the rules of inheritance. The State Land Act is also being amended because since 2013, when a hotel suspends its operation, it's no longer operating, because it is going for renovation or reconstruction, the annual rental for the state land leased, usually pagéométrique, on the seafront, is reduced by 50%. During the COVID years, it was 100%, and then it went back to 50%. So ever since 2013, a hotel that goes for reconstruction or renovation, while it is not in operation, pays only 50% of the rental. And that is very important because renovation, reconstruction for a hotel is the rule. A hotel cannot go beyond 10 years, 15 years without going for renovation. Otherwise, it cannot face up to the competitive environment it operates in. It cannot face up to the expectation and demand of its clientele. Now, unfortunately, this measure was not extended after June 2023, and we are now remedying the situation. We are introducing legal provision that will cover the period June 23 to June 2025. And any excess amount paid for 23-24 will be offset as against the liability for 24-25. I think that is quite straightforward. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, you will be happy to hear, lastly, amendment of the Tourism Authority Act. Now, until now, a restaurant by definition had to have more than 40 covers. Otherwise, it could not get a license to operate. That is not very democratic. We can have smaller restaurants. And it is not good for the development of tourism. Increasingly now we speak of gastronomy restaurants. And so this necessity, this requirement of a minimum of 40 covers is being removed from the law to allow for smaller restaurants to legally operate. Also, the Tourism Authority Act is being amended so that henceforth a tourist accommodation certificate will be issued for 1 year instead of 3 years, for the very simple reason that on the one hand, these certificates were being issued for 3 years, whereas the tourism enterprise license, fees, and insurance certificate had to be renewed every year. So it led to a very confusing situation. We are simply aligning so that henceforth, both the tourism accommodation certificate and the tourism enterprise license fees will be payable for a year. Those, Mr. Speaker, are the provisions that pertain to the Ministries of Housing and Tourism that concern the ministries for which I am responsible. I am done. Thank you very much.
I suspend the sitting for 30 minutes.